Welcome back to the Plunge with Purpose podcast, where we talk about all things freediving in the ocean and the springs. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about getting our little minnows in the water. For those of you divers that have kids or that want to get your kids in the water, I have a 6 and an 8-year-old, and they are ocean obsessed almost as much as I am. They're very comfortable snorkeling. My 8-year-old is successfully freediving to about 15 feet. And so I wanted to share tips and tricks as to how we've gotten to this point, because it wasn't just a snap of the fingers. And then I also want to share some gripes, some things that I've seen on the reef lately that I think just deserve some time and attention here, with hopes that for those of you teaching your kids, you will teach them the right way to act in the water, and maybe, share with a friend if you notice something that I mentioned, all good things. So, okay, starting off with getting your kids in the water. I started diving when my kids were, I don't know, young. They were comfortable swimming. I think that's a must, is they just have to be comfortable in the water. But getting them out on the reef and diving has taken a lot of work. So I've kind of got a system down, and I'm just going to share my current system and then some tips of how I got here. So I take them to a reef that is right off the beach where we can swim out, but I make it as easy as possible for them. Like, I'm all about the enjoyment for them. I don't want them to have to do much work, because they are so little, and I know that they'll get tired. Also a safety thing with them getting tired out there. So what I do is I have it's like an inflatable boat, and it can fit one adult and one kid or two kids, and they're about 50 pounds each. So I inflate this boat before we get to the beach. And I have a paracord line and a carabiner attached. And I actually tow them out to the reef. So I swim out with them. And in the boat, they have their fins, they have their masks and their snorkels. Now, if something were to happen, right, let's say the boat punctures or something like that, these girls, they can very easily swim the distance that I am swimming for them. So before we got to this point, they would always have, life jackets on, for the swim out and everything. So now, they're really, really comfortable swimmers. The life jackets are there. I get them out there in the raft. And at any point when they want to get in the water and try to swim with me, they can, but most of the time they just cruise. So we get out to the reef and I tell them it's a good time to get in. And, they'll get their masks on in the boat. And I actually have these new Froggles mask straps for them, which, if you're not familiar, I'll share a link in the comments below. But essentially, they sit on top and behind their heads, so it can't slip off. It's a genius invention, you guys. There's no fumbling with the mask anymore. It's incredible. And then some little Cressy kids masks that fit them perfectly. So anyways, they get their own masks on and they get in the water and they swim around for as long as they want. And, I've always got someone with me, either my partner or friends or whomever. So we've always got eyes on one. And it winds up being a really great time. They're identifying fish and they are so excited with what they're seeing out there. There's like nothing better than sharing that world with them. And so the 8-year-old, it's a lot of mimicking. And so she'll mimic, what I do. And so I'm teaching her, how to pre-equalize, and we do some of this stuff at home. We talk about it. So it's not just like, hey, get out there and watch me. There's some thought beforehand that goes into this. But anyway, so we're out there, she'll mimic, and, she'll point out, oh, like there's an eel. Like just this past weekend for Mother's Day weekend, we went out to the beach and we did a snorkeling session, and she saw a spotted moray, a bunch of porkfish, stingrays, what else? Oh gosh, so much. And, she loves identifying things, and she'll dive down to get a closer look, and she does a really great job. The younger one does not wear a snorkel. She just does a mask because it was too much for her to try to coordinate all that stuff. So she'll just kind of hold her breath and look in and then kind of pick up, gets in and out of the float as she pleases. And it's just a really enjoyable time. So I would love, for those of you with kids, I'd love for you to have this experience as well. And I want to share how we got to this point because it's like, aside from the swim out there, towing them out there and towing them back, it's like effortless. And, there's no whining, there's no complaining, which my kids are not angels. Like they whine and they complain just like everybody else. But out there, they want to stay out longer than I do. Like I'm ready to go back in. They're like, no, we don't want to leave. So here's how we got there. All right. It started again, do the work for them. And the first couple of times that we did this in my head, I'm like, okay, we're going to get out there. They're going to hate it. And I'm going to come right back in. So I had to tell myself and still tell myself that anytime in the water with my kids, it's for them. That dive, that snorkel session, it is for them. It's not for me. It's not on my time. It's on their time and their terms, which I don't abide by that in many things in our life. But for this, it was like, I'm going to make it enjoyable. And if they want to call it, we're going to call it. And surprisingly, they did okay the first couple of times. The little one was a little freaked out because it was comb jelly season the first time she went. So there were comb jellies everywhere, which don't sting you. But it's just it's kind of weird. They're like squishy little things that float and touch you. And, visually, I'm sure it was a lot for her. So we had to call that one. We came right back in and it's like, you guys did great, tons of positive affirmation. We were out there for 10 minutes, but it was awesome. And so that's key, is just understanding that the first couple of times are probably going to be very, very quick. So just being patient with that and patient with that process, which is something I preach in all aspects of diving. So whether it's with yourself or with your minnows, be patient. The next thing is making sure that they can put on and take off all of their gear by themselves. That's like a prerequisite before we get in the water, is you've got to be so comfortable with your gear. So the mask was the first one, and teaching them how to, here's what I showed them is I said, put it on your face where you want it to sit, and then you take the strap and pull it behind your head. And it took a while, but they got it. And we'd practice at home in the bathtub. We have a hot tub. They'll practice in the hot tub. I mean, anywhere you can turn into a practice session. If you have a pool, it's a great place. And teaching them to, not just dry, but also when they're in the water, because sometimes they'll get water in their mask and they'll take it all the way off. And you want to make sure that they can put it back on by themselves. A convenience for you as a parent, also a safety thing. I just think if you're out there, fumbling with your stuff, it just doesn't seem safe. So better for them to know how to do it. They can get back in the little boat and, reconfigure everything. And same thing with their fins. They had to know how to put on and take off their own fins. We have the Cressy adjustable kids fins. I'll drop a link for those too in the description for this. Just because I'd love nothing more than for you guys with kids to be able to get out there. So I'm happy to share all of my gear. Okay, what else? So yeah, knowing that it's on their terms, making sure they're fully comfortable with putting on and taking off their gear. And then teaching them how to be efficient in the water. So my kids they're great swimmers. Again, they've loved the water. I got them started pretty young in swimming lessons, but putting on the fins and then a mask and then a snorkel, it's like a lot for them to absorb. And for some reason, my little one cannot understand that if you have a snorkel on and you pick your face up out of the water, you're going to dip the snorkel in the water behind your head and get it all in your mouth. She can't grasp that. So, we tried a couple times with a snorkel and I was like, you know what? Let's just forget this and let's see how you do. And she was like, yeah, I don't like it. Okay, let's get rid of it. You don't want to dive with a snorkel? Go for it. I have no problem with that. And it's been great. She can't obviously keep her head down and swim for as long as my other one, but she has no problem with it. She would rather have the shorter looks and be able to come up whenever she wants than have to stay in that head down position. And I'm great with it. We don't even bring the snorkel out with us. It stays on the beach. In the event that she wants to try it again, it's there. So I think just being really fluid with what they need and what they're comfortable with is really key as well. Okay, and then the next thing is just avoiding anything that could cause them discomfort. So they're out there longer than I have ever expected these days. And so I wanted to make sure that they're protected from the sun. So getting your kids in a full body rash guard is the biggest time saver as far as, trying to do the sunscreen game before you go out. And then it also saves you because you don't have to come back in and reapply. So something that I would highly recommend to you guys is a full body rash guard. And there are, a bunch of them out there. I don't know. Actually don't think that I've shared this with you guys yet. So my dive line that I have, it's for full body UV dive suits, rash guards, dive skins, whatever you want to call them. And I actually, when I sourced them originally, I had my own sizes made and my kids, because I said eventually, I would make them for kids. And so I have. And actually, by the time that this episode is released, I will have the first kids pattern up on my website. So this is, for those of you watching the YouTube video, this is a full body dive suit rash guard. So it's, it's long sleeve, long pants. It has little thumb holes for them. So the majority of their hands are covered. It even has, foot straps in case they want to put their heel through here and it goes around their whole foot. Not their whole foot, but it leaves their toes out. And then, yeah, it's super soft. It's really, really stretchy and it protects them from the sun. So you guys can be out there for hours and you don't have to worry about anything but their face. And for the most part, their faces are down in the water and we haven't had problems with sunburn yet. As long as we apply reef safe, mineral-based sunscreen to their faces, let it dry, and then go dive. We've been good for hours, you guys. And they come out, their backs, their shoulders, their legs, totally fine, no burn. So I think that's a biggie, is avoiding burn. Also, these full body suits protect them from jellyfish stings because there's nothing worse than your kid getting a jellyfish sting. There's not much you can do about it. And it ends the day. And then they're scarred because they don't want to go back in, they harbor that. I think it becomes like a core memory. So avoiding that at all costs is ideal. So yes, these are on my site. I'll drop a link to this as well. It's Plunge Waterwear. And, if this isn't your style, if you want other patterns, there are more on Amazon or anywhere, really. Just cover your kids up. You'll thank yourself later. Okay. So what's next? We talked about getting them out to the reef, minimal effort, planning for short, covering them up. They're comfortable with their gear. A lot of it too is positive affirmation. And, some kids need a little bit more attention than others, but I lay it on hard out there. It's like everything they do is amazing. You guys are so great. And they really get that like intrinsic reward and value being out there. Like they come back and they're proud of themselves for what they did. And, their growth it's incredible. So another thing, and I think the last thing I'll cover here is making sure that they're doing as much prehab as you are. And in my last episode, I talked about prehab. It's everything you can do before your dive to prevent like injury or discomfort, any of that stuff. So the same thing goes for your kids. Make sure they're super, super hydrated before you guys get out there. Make sure they've had a good breakfast. Do all the things for them that you would do for yourself. Because again, the last thing you want is for them to be out there and like, oh, I'm hungry, a water bottle that has like a clip area on the top, either Nalgene or something. You can clip a carabiner to that and also clip it to your float, your boat that you're bringing. So then that way, when you're out there, if they do get thirsty, yes, they have water, but hydrate them beforehand. And then tons of snacks back at the beach, tons of food. I do lots of fruit, give them that nice like sugar boost right when we get back. So that's all been really effective for me. Every kid is different. Every reef is different. I don't know what you're dealing with, but this is what has worked for us and tried and true. They are so happy in the water and they truly want to stay out there longer than I do. So it's worked well for us. And my heart is just so full every time we do this. And they're becoming little stewards of the ocean too. So I'll transition over to my gripes for a second. And I was going to do a whole episode on gripes. It's an episode that shall never get released because I recorded it and I'm like, you know what, Lisa, no one wants to hear you complain for 45 minutes. So I'm going to summarize it and then pack it into this little bit right here. So gripes, where did I get this from? I listened to another podcast. I stumbled across it because I was just looking for anything relating to freediving. So I searched freediving in Apple Podcast, and this episode comes up, and the podcast channel is called Dude Nature. And if you don't know who they are, you should probably look them up if you want a good laugh. They're two brothers. They're hilarious, and they talk about the most random of things. But this one episode was on freediving. And I actually learned some stuff from them. It was very informative, also very funny. But, now as I've listened to some of their other episodes, they always started off with gripes. So they each take turns complaining about something that has bothered them since the last recording. And it's, again, about random stuff that happens to them, during their week, not anything in particular. And I thought, man, I have some gripes. I have some gripes about the reef and diving and things that I've seen, and I'd love to share them. So again, I recorded them, and I'll spare you. I'll spare you and summarize it here. And it ties in to this whole diving with kids thing because I see stuff and it upsets me, and I feel that it's wrong, and I'll come back and teach them about it. And then when we're out there, they're spotting things that they're then saying to me, like, Mommy, can you believe that XYZ, so yeah, I'm gonna do this little gripe. Okay, so the first gripe that I have is about touching the coral, touching anything while we're out there. One thing that I teach my girls is when we're out there, guys, it's your hands are to yourselves. You're not touching anything. And I think what people don't realize, and even some of my adult diver friends, I don't think they realize that when you touch coral, that you can do damage to it, even if you're wearing gloves. So something that I always am told back whenever I say to someone, and I always say it very gently, by the way. I'm never like an aggressive, like, hey, what are you doing? It's more like hey, did you know that when you touch it, you can actually damage coral? And the response is usually, oh, no, it's fine. I'm wearing gloves. And I think to myself, well, that's great for you because you won't get affected by like fire coral, but you can still damage the coral. When you're wearing gloves, you can do physical damage to the coral and it can cause them to expel their polyps. If you're not wearing gloves and you touch the coral, your oils on your hands can bother them. You can cause disease. And again, you can physically damage it. So for all of the reasons, just don't touch the coral. And I see it most often when people are spearfishing and they'll go and kind of like hold on to a coral ledge and try to stay in position. I'll also see it a lot with women because they love to get that shot for the gram. They're always trying to pose and sitting on coral. It's like, no, just don't. Just don't sit on it. Don't touch it, whether you're wearing gloves or not. So that's something I teach my girls is just whatever you see out there, we don't touch. What's another thing? Oh, there was a turtle on the reef here in Boca where we dive, and someone was hand feeding it and touching it. And I actually didn't know this until a few years ago. There are hefty fines here in Florida for touching sea turtles. They are protected. Do not touch them. Nasty fines. But also, we don't want to be feeding anything out there. We don't want to be conditioning these animals that people equals food, because then they're going to be more drawn to us, more drawn to boats, which means they're going to be getting struck by boats. So for all the reasons, don't feed anything, don't touch anything. There's just no need. Those are two of my gripes. So not touching coral, not feeding anything, not touching any animals, truly keeping our hands to ourselves. So the next one is trash. And my girls, they're diving, they're actually, free diving, going down, checking things out. They're not at a point yet where they can be, picking up trash. I guess that's the exceptions. The one thing you can touch out there is trash. So, I don't hold them to this standard, but I do like that they point trash out to me if I don't see it. And if I see it, it's coming back with us. And I just can't find a reason why you wouldn't pick up trash when you see it. So the gripe here is I was diving with someone who I love very much a couple years ago. And it must have been after a storm because there was so much trash this day. Like you couldn't look somewhere and not see trash. So I'm picking it up, putting it in my float. And I have when I'm not with the kids, I have a float flag that has a space in the middle where you can keep, waters or whatever and trash that you collect. It also has a clip on the bottom where I attach a carabiner with a mesh bag, and you can fill that puppy up with trash too. You can take back quite a haul. So picking up what I see, and I kept noticing that he was swimming over the trash and just not picking it up. So after a few minutes, I'd say it was a good like 20 minutes, he had ample opportunity to grab it. So I was like, hey, why aren't you picking up the trash that you're seeing? And his response was, I didn't come here to do that today. I didn't come here to do a cleanup. And I'm like, oh, but it's here and you're diving anyways. Like, just grab it. Like, I couldn't and still can't understand why you wouldn't just grab it. Can't wrap my mind around that one. So anyways, that story actually ends well because whatever I said must have struck something, because by the end of the dive, guess who was picking up trash? And ever since then, anytime we're out there, I do see him picking it up when he sees it. So hooray, one small victory. But I do teach the girls like, hey, if you see it, let me know. And they always see me picking stuff up, and even fishing line. A lot of the times we'll see fishing line out there. We actually, this past weekend, so sad, there was a baby shark, and this little guy, he was hooked, and then the fishing line was like all around all of the rocks around him. And then the line, huge line, was just strung out. So, we gathered up the line and I taught them, how you stay away from it. You don't want to get tangled up in it, super dangerous. And then we cut it right near the shark's mouth. So we removed, all the line, took it out with us. And so of course there's questions there, like, oh, why'd you take it? Oh, well, not only is it trash, but it's also really dangerous. People can get tangled and drown, whatever. So it's a great example to set for them of picking it up and then having them help spot it out. And then looking at the haul when you get back, by the way, I have found $20, found a $20 bill one time. I found an entire bottle of unopened rum, which I still haven't unopened to this day. All I know is it's Barbancourt based on the top metal label, but the paper one that goes around the bottle has peeled off. So I have no idea what kind it is. But one day, one day I'll get into that thing. And what else? I have found toys for them, little Lego mermaid, sand shovels, sand pails, you name it, we have found it. So, oh, and golf balls, so many golf balls, you guys. I don't know what that's about, but here in South Florida, there are so many golf balls on our reefs, and there's no golf course around where I dive. So there's that. But yeah, so teaching them to pick things up is a great lesson. And then as they get older and as they progress in their diving, I expect that they'll be doing it right along with me. So I love that. And next gripe, this is the last one. I'll leave it at this one. So my next and final gripe is about sunscreen. So as I just talked about, full body rash guards for kids, there's also rash guards for adults. That's my original line. I have 7 different designs now for women. And again, they are totally sun protective. They're UPF 50. So the only thing you have to worry about is your face. And so my gripe here is, I think we're at a point where reef safe sunscreen is like so in your face, and you can get it anywhere that you can get non-reef safe sunscreen. So it's frustrating to me that when we go to the beach, like everybody that I see is spraying on the chemical based So there's mineral-based and chemical-based, by the way. Chemical-based are the ones that include, oh, what is it? I'm gonna mess this up. The benzone. I cannot remember for the life of me right now. That's terrible. I do know the good ones. That's why, because I don't buy the bad ones. The good ones are things that have like zinc oxide or mineral-based reflectants. So those are the ones that you want to buy. And so again, it frustrates me that I see at beaches, people are still using the same old shit and it causes damage to our reefs. So the comeback, I guess, that I've heard is that the reef safe stuff is so much more expensive. And it's like, well, hey, you could just like cut the whole issue out completely and cover up. And then you don't have to be applying it and going through bottle after bottle of sunblock over the summer. Again, all you'd have to worry about is your face. And if you're snorkeling or diving, your head's down most of the time anyways. So I'm pretty bad. I don't really put much on my face. And I do okay. Sometimes I come out, actually might have a little one right now. Sometimes I come out with like this mask line where I'll be like tan on my cheeks and like the very top of my forehead, but then everything else is pale. Sometimes it looks like a beard. That's when you know you've had a good dive day. But for the most part, it's fine. I cover up my body and I don't have to worry about buying sunscreen. So that's a gripe that I've just had for a while. I don't get it. Cover up, use mineral based, stop harming the reefs more than you need to. So, all right. Concluding gripes. That's it for those. Oh gosh. So, just bringing all of this full circle, I think, getting our kids in the water, having them develop a sense of appreciation for what's out there is going to do us so good down the line. I mean, we're hearing a lot about, issues in the water and fish doing crazy stuff here in Florida. I get so sad about all the overfishing stuff that we hear and all the reef, the coral bleaching. And there's so much bad that's happening. And we really do need more conservationists, more marine biologists. We need more people finding tangible solutions, raising money for those solutions, with these wonderful nonprofits that we have. And I think if these kids develop a deep sense of appreciation for the water, they're going to perpetuate that. And I really, really hope that we can see more kids doing good for the ocean, as well as everything else. But my heart's in the ocean. So that's what I'm going for. I think the more that we expose them, the more that they have good experiences and the more that they understand that they can make a difference with what's going on, it's going to be really effective. And I know that I'm doing my part with my girls. And if there's anything I can do to help you guys get your kids in the water, I am here. I am here to answer questions. Whatever you guys want to know, you can drop it in the comments. You can send me an email. Actually, I don't know if I've ever provided that. My email is support@plungegear.com. I will also drop that in the description. So whatever I can do to support you guys in this journey with your kids and developing this sense of stewardship. I always talk about how I'm the Lorax of the water, and I always do speak for the reef, the same way the Lorax, speaks for the trees. But I do think it will make a difference, guys. And one reminder that I want to share is if you are on the reef or if you're at the beach and you're seeing, one of these gripes or maybe a gripe of your own, and you feel empowered to say something to someone, I would just suggest, doing it as kindly as possible. I've never gotten negative feedback from someone that I've approached or someone that I've been diving with and made a comment to about whatever I noticed. And I really think it's in the delivery. If you come off your heart's in a good place and, hey, just didn't know if and you share some information, it can go pretty darn well. Hasn't gone bad for me yet. So I would just, strongly suggest as sweet as possible, just being informative. And if someone doesn't want to hear it, they don't want to hear it. But, I think at least we can all do our part and just make sure that people know. So this leads me to an idea, by the way. I wasn't going to talk about this, but it fits well here. So I think people are really unaware of rules and regulations and in small things like a lot of people don't know that it harms the coral when you touch it. Most people would know to pick up trash when you see it because the ocean is not an endless dump. But I think we're not making it in your face enough as to the consequences, whether it's like a monetary fine or whether it's loss of coral. So, one idea would be at like beach entrances, like really popular public beach entrances where there's a reef that people are going to be out on. I think it needs to be really well displayed as to what's going on. And there's a lot of signage already at these beach entrances, things like the weather report, the flags for that day, the high tide, low tide, water temperature, all that stuff is displayed on like these big chalkboards that the lifeguards fill out each day. So it's already almost like a little bit much and probably not a great place to absorb more information. But here's the thought. And a friend of mine in a dive group had this idea. What if there was a QR code? So if someone has a nonprofit and you're listening and you want some feedback as to how we can make people aware, here's the idea. A QR code, and it can be right at the beach entrance, and it has a really catchy sign next to it, like, want to avoid a $50,000 fine today? Scan this code. And it would take them to a page that would describe all of the common misconceptions with that beach, or maybe all of the common mishaps and the fine associated with it, like touching a sea turtle, $50,000 fine or whatever it is. It's extreme. It's a good extreme. I like it. I think it should be higher. But things like that. And even to the point where it could be contributor based, so if there's like a separate page for each beach, maybe people can contribute who are locals to that area, because we're the ones that are seeing most of this stuff go down. And, from all the things that I've seen out there, from, again, I know sunscreens I can't report and there's no fine, but, maybe there could be something on there of, here's sunscreen ingredients that you should use, here's the ones to avoid, and here's why. You could give stats about, all the coral bleaching and, what we've seen particular to that area, like here in South Florida and the Keys this year. Oh my God, you guys, there was so much bleaching this summer. And actually, when we damage these corals, that's kind of what they do, is they bleach themselves. They expel their polyps. And if it goes on too long, those polyps don't re-inhabit and we're left with bleached coral. So we want to do anything and everything to avoid that happening. And, sunscreens, not touching them, these are all contributing factors. So that's a big one. And then again, about feeding wildlife, why it's important not to. I think a lot of this stuff is just not well known. Throw it on a QR code, avoid that $50,000 fine. I would read that. I'd be like, oh, snap. What do people do here? So I don't know. That's the idea. I feel like it could be taken somewhere. So if you're listening and you like the idea, have at it. Let me know how I can be of help. Oh gosh. All right. Well, I think this has gone on longer already than I needed it to. But anyways, thank you guys for listening to this. Thank you for hearing out my gripes. And I truly hope that you will get your kids in the water, enjoying the reef with you, and developing this sense of appreciation and protecting the ocean, and conserving it for the next generation. If this resonated with you, if you enjoyed what you heard, would really appreciate a review. If you guys have questions, reach out anytime. Drop them in the comments. I'll be sure to message back. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. Happy diving.